Good evening and welcome to Estuary TV News with me, James Dunn. On tonight's show, news never sleeps and by the looks of our reporter Erica Barker, nor does she. Today, Erica's in the studio for a review of last week's papers. But first, here's Emma Lingard with the news headlines.
Hello, the headlines today. A former Grimsby school site goes on the market. School zones become 20-mile-per-hour areas. And Grimsby Central Library reopens after a refurbishment. The largest residential development to come on the market in Grimsby for years is up for sale. Buildings and around 25 acres of playing field at the former Western School site are on offer. Property agent Scott's believe that up to 475 dwellings could be built on the site.
Can't remember the last time a site of about 25 acres came on the market in the area, particularly one that's suitable for development for housing. And we're quite keen to be involved in the sale. We're very pleased to be involved and instructed by North East Links Council, and I think we'll find there's quite a bit of interest in the site from local, regional and even national house builders.
North East Lincolnshire Council plans to roll out 20-mile-per-hour safety zones around all schools in the borough. A decision was made last week to impose the zones at 13 schools across Grimsby, Cleethorpes and Immingham, which will come into force in around 6 weeks' time. But portfolio holder for Transport, Ray Oxby, hopes to eventually roll out the scheme around all schools. They'll be increased in phased approaches using funds from subsequent budgets.
20 miles an hour is a following good practice that we've had through the road safety partnerships, that speed does actually have an influence on accidents. So by taking from 30 to 20 in a residential and an urban setting, that will reduce the risks and obviously protect the children as they go into school and coming out from school as well.
A man and a woman from North Lincolnshire have been prosecuted for benefit fraud. Donna Farrell from Scunthorpe and Aaron Wilson from Broughton both pleaded guilty at Scunthorpe Magistrates Court. Farrell received a 12-month community order with a 12-week curfew and was to attend sessions of the Specifically for Women's programme, as well as pay £200 in court costs. Wilson received a 12-month community order and was also ordered to pay court costs. Amidst an ongoing consultation over the future of North East Lincolnshire Library services, Grimsby Central Library reopened today. Over the last 3 months, the 50-year-old building has undergone essential maintenance work. As part of the refurbishment, collections have been moved to allow users easier access.
It's very exciting. It's a central library within Grimsby. They've done a lot of work, a lot of effort's gone in by our teams, by the contractors and indeed the removal people. Something like 2,500 books and cases have been shifting about for the last 3 months.
Hull North MP Diana Johnson is calling for power to be devolved to the North in an article published in the socialist think tank Fabian Review. In it, she writes that regenerating cities like Hull needs a central government commitment to reducing regional inequalities. The YMCA Humbers Sleep Easy event is building up momentum. In its 4th year, supporters and fundraisers will spend the night sleeping rough, and this year it will take place in Freshney Place Shopping Centre's car park. Over the years, the Sleep Out has managed to raise over £75,000 to help homeless causes in the region. The event takes place on January the 31st from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Police are appealing for the driver of a car which was involved in a non-stop traffic collision with a pedestrian to come forward. It happened at 6:40 in the evening on Wednesday, January the 8th on Grandale in Hull. The car involved is described as a silver small to medium-sized hatchback. The pedestrian was treated for minor injuries. And in another incident in Grimsby, police are seeking witnesses to a collision involving a cyclist on Curry Road on Wednesday the 15th around 1:15 p.m. 4 cardboard cutouts of real police officers have been placed in shops in Louth and Horncastle. The figures are being used as a visual deterrent to remind anyone thinking of committing a crime that the police are patrolling nearby. Volunteers interested in conservation have been called upon to help at Oak Hill Nature Reserve. The reserve near Goole is part of the Humberhead Levels Nature Improvement Area, which is an area of unique wetland. Work will soon start thinning out the birch woodland and replanting with native species. And that's all from me. Until next time, goodbye.
Thanks, Emma. Now, today in the studio I have Erica Barker. She's a freelance journalist from Hull who has worked for various radio stations across the region and is now a reporter here on Estuary TV. You might have seen her reading the Bulletin or the sports this year, and now she's here in the studio for our weekly paper review. Hello, Erica.
Hello, that's a lovely introduction there, James.
Thanks very much.
I filled my whole career.
So true.
Right then, I'll start with this first story that was in the Hull Daily Mail yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's a third of families earn less than the living wage. So basically it's saying that many people in Hull can't afford kind of, you know, a basic good standard of living, which I think is really interesting. Diana Johnson, the MP for Hull, is saying that she's looking at it to be £7.45, but the minimum wage is currently £6.31. And
so do we know what the difference between sort of the living wage and the minimum wage is?
I mean, basically, kind of the figures that I gave there, I mean, you're looking at kind of £1 something extra. But I mean, hourly, that can make a massive difference to people's income, you know, to be able to pay for the bills and pay for everyday costs, really. And obviously, kind of within line with inflation, it's important that people are able to afford these things. And it's only fair, I'd say, as well.
And do employers have to pay this living wage? I mean, what's the difference?
They don't have to pay it now. Obviously, they have to pay the minimum wage. That is a legal requirement. But is the minimum wage enough? And that is the question. And that is what is being discussed, really, in politics right now.
Yeah, and so obviously what Diana Johnson's saying is that amount is not enough. And it would be
Yeah.
a real struggle to live off minimum wage.
Mm. Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I definitely think it would be a struggle. Obviously, kind of the costs are going up when it comes to shopping, when you go for your like normal shop, or even when it comes to petrol or and all these things, they do all add up, and it can be really difficult.
Mm. And it's interesting because obviously the Chancellor's come out this week, last week, and said that it's important. Well, he would recommend a minimum wage increase above the rate of inflation, which is the first time. Well, it's not something you necessarily expect from George Osborne.
Well, no, exactly. So he's on the bandwagon as well, isn't he? Hopefully it'll get through.
But she's a Labour MP, obviously.
Well, yeah, it's true. But I think it's definitely something that really needs to be discussed and looked at further. And
so what else have you got with you here today?
So the next one is in the Grimsby Telegraph. It's come off the programme. Have you seen the Benefit programme?
Yeah, Benefit Street.
Benefit Street. That's
everyone's talking about it right now.
Yeah, everyone's talking about that. But it's a series called Skint. The first series was filmed in Scunthorpe.
On the Westcliff estate?
It was, yes, it was. And they're looking at doing the second series in Nunsthorpe in Grimsby. And people are coming forward and saying, basically, you know, let's not demonise Grimsby, let's not have this whole 50 minutes of fame and kind of put a dampener on the excellent, amazing work that does go on in the town.
Well, obviously, there was a documentary on the Nunsthorpe probably last year, I think it was, or possibly the year before, and many people felt that it did demonise the area and totally ignored some of the good things that went on.
Well, I think it does, because I think in every city, I think, you know, things happen in every city, but obviously you need to talk about, I think, the amazing things that go on in a city and in a town, and that's just as important,
and
I would say.
With Skin and rumours of Benefit Street coming to Grimsby, I suppose it doesn't paint a great picture of where we live. And not a true picture, perhaps.
No, I completely agree.
Brilliant. So what else have you got with you today?
And then the next one is a story in Grimsby, a burglar caught red-handed and given a hiding. This was a man that was burgling a house, stole some jewellery and jumped out of the first floor window, tried to escape. A man was walking his dog, saw him, thought it looked a bit dodgy, took him to the floor and waited for the police to arrive.
All right.
So I think, well, a very brave man, I'd say. But I think it, you know, it raises the question of kind of, is it safe to do that? Is it right to do that? What do you think?
So I suppose it's where do you draw the line as well?
Yeah,
like, what is acceptable? I suppose a lot of people would feel a little bit uncertain as to what is allowed and what isn't allowed if you do sort of catch someone who has come into your home.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think, many people are still, unaware of what is suitable. I know there was a change in the law, wasn't there, that when it comes to people into your house, that it's reasonable force or something, I think it is. I don't know for definite.
Well, I remember Ken Clarke, who was a Justice Secretary at the time, saying something a little bit controversial, saying you should be allowed to hit them with a poker or something.
Yeah, I think
which got him into some hot water.
I think there was something like that. But I mean, I think this man should be commended for his bravery for what he did.
Yeah.
And obviously they've reprehended this man, and it's a good end to the story. But I don't know, it raises that question. I don't know if I'd be brave enough maybe to take a burglar to the floor. I'm not sure if I would.
Now, I'd just like to go on to another story that you've picked out here, which is the fact that here in the Scunthorpe Telegraph, they're talking about putting a security guard into the library. And with some of the incidents that they've reported, I thought was very interesting. Apparently they've had an increase since McDonald's shut.
Yes, yeah, that's what it says. That's what it says there. And I think the ages as well. I think, does it say that it's over a certain age? So it's not
over
youngsters.
16-year-olds.
Over 16-year-olds. So it's not the youngsters that you may expect.
They should know better, shouldn't they?
But to cause him problems. It's the old ones. I mean, I wonder who these older people are that want to go cause trouble in a library.
Like, I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's not funny, really, is it?
But in fairness, it's actually not funny. I mean,
there's people
it is
smoking, abusing the staff, and those people, that's not what they're paid to do, is it?
No, exactly. But I mean, have we really reached a time where we need a security guard at a library? Is it really reached at that point?
It's a sad state of affairs.
It is quite a sad state of affairs. So it is a very serious story, really.
So there's another thing that we did point out somewhere. What else have you got?
So I've got these ones here. This is in the Hull Daily Mail as well. It's about a gang target, 4 men in an hour near the university campus. I'm from Hull. I went to university in Hull, and it is one of those things where, when it comes to student safety, it is a really important thing to discuss because it can be very dangerous. I mean, I'm sure you was the same, James, when you went to uni. You might have one drink too many, and
I know.
It can get you in a situation where you may be unaware of the people who are around you or how dangerous it can be, really.
Well, you become vulnerable, I suppose.
You do, yeah, that is the one. You do become vulnerable. And I think, I've been speaking to people as well, and they've kind of, they're going out to students and they're speaking to them and they're saying, listen, you need to make sure that you're safe. You need to make sure that someone knows where you are at all times, that you're always with a friend, and just to be mindful when you're drinking, really. Yeah.
There's another thing that we talked about, which was here in the Market Raisin Mail, which is Sir Edward Lee, who is the MP's column that he has regularly in the paper. And he's talking about rural areas being underrepresented and the cost of transport in those areas. I mean, there were some particularly funny comments in the column where he said that he thinks people in cities often assume that it's all people in their Cotswold-style cottages and retired admirals. I mean, do you think that people in these rural areas do get a raw deal as far as consideration goes?
I haven't had a great deal of time to look at this story. I mean, what would you say on that one?
I mean, it's certainly interesting. I mean, I know that the government spends more per head in urban areas than it does in rural areas, and
I think some people in rural areas can feel that they do get a raw deal, can't they? And that they're not taking into consideration the way people in urban areas might be, and
certainly with transport costs.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that there's been some issues in some places where they're kind of cutting transport and buses aren't going to be going into those areas. And I mean, it's vital. And I mean, a lot of elderly people live in these areas, and it's important that they're able to get into the towns and the cities. And it would be a great shame if that wasn't available.
And a lot of services are subsidised by the council, and of course, councils are having huge cuts to their budgets.
Well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? And so
where does the burden lie?
Yeah, that is very true.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming in today, Erica. It's been nice to talk to you.
You too.
Now, the news will be back as usual again tomorrow. And don't forget that if you have any local stories or issues that you think that we should cover, you can get in touch by phone on Grimsby 315561, on Facebook or on Twitter @EstuaryTV, or you can email us at news@estuary.tv. That's all we've got time for today. I'll see you again next time.